Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
For artists that want to follow a realistic style, I don't know that you necessarily have to overthink about an influence like me or any other painter who does realism. You can certainly get a lot from the pieces that we've done, maybe even imitate some of those compositions, but I think you'll find your own way once you're just studying reality, which is what I would do. I mean, if I'm going to look at people, things, photographs, it's beneficial to start shooting your own if you can get into that. And these days, since everybody's got a camera, that's not so much of an issue anymore. Being able to study life as the basis for something is the best. I had the longest problem of thinking I needed to have everybody and every element be perfect before I could use it as a reference source. And so it took me a long time to realize how flexible the basis of the human form is. I've posed for myself on loads of paintings where now I guess I'm called out by some people online. It's a process of getting your mind comfortable with what you're building off of. And at a certain point, I would say accept that you're going to feel like you're not seeing it until you've seen it. You know, that maybe you do need to have a thing look like a thing exactly before you're painting from it.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for another Word Balloon Live, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Look who's here, everybody. I'm so glad he's joining us tonight. It's Cliff Chiang. Great to see you, Cliff.
Hi, good to see you.
Long time, man. I can't remember the last time I saw you at a show.
Yeah, I haven't been doing shows the last few years. I had a kid a few years ago, and I feel like being home, like it's kind of more important. It's harder for me to leave because then like my wife is doing everything, and then but pretty soon I think I can bring him on the road with me. I think he's pretty good with math. He can handle the cash.
That's great, man. How old is he?
He's turning 9, so pretty soon he can come around and we can go toy shopping and stuff.
There you go, man. That's just like my father. Put us to work, man, before
yeah, for
kids.
sure.
That's wonderful. Outstanding. Well, Cliff, I'm really excited to talk about the new Black Label Catwoman, Lonely City. And,
yeah, thanks.
There's a fantastic cover, and I got a couple more to show as well. But this is great, truly. And I thank DC for allowing me to take a glimpse and preview the first couple issues. Tremendous story. We can tell by Selina's face, the lines in her face and everything, that this is kind of a future Catwoman story.
Yeah, she's older. The short version of it is she's been in prison for 10 years, and now that she's out, she's planning to break into the Batcave to solve the mystery of Batman's dying words.
Very cool, man. And yeah, we get a real glimpse of, and it's great because, of course, people might initially think of Dark Knight Returns as far as, kind of the familiar subject matter. Also, what King is doing with Clayman on Batman Catwoman. But this is what I love about not only Black Label, but the Infinite Frontier, where it's like, hey, let's have a bunch of different ideas of what the future might be for these characters. But it's great to see your version of where the Bat universe is in this story.
Yeah, it's in my head, it actually takes place now. Darwin and Ed Brubaker, they redid Catwoman, in the year 2000. It's been more than 20 years, and my thought was, well, what happens if you took that Catwoman and aged her up 20 years? You know, like what would she be doing now? What is that world like? And so that was my starting point for this story. And you know, her returning after 10 years to a very different Gotham City that is now more or less under lockdown. You know, with Mayor Harvey Dent in control, and you know, and it's, you know, overly policed and very gentrified, and you know, there's a lot of things that a lot of the problems that we see in our cities today. Just, you know, I want to treat Gotham as, you know, a character itself, and really kind of bring Gotham, you know, make it like the New York that, you know, I was living in and love so much.
That's awesome, man. And you can tell already people just chiming in with the love for this thing, just even based on your words and the few images that we are allowed to show. Here's another alternate cover.
Yeah, actually, this is the main cover, and then and I actually got my comps today. Yeah, pretty
Hold
nice.
on. There we go. Zoom in. Boom.
Yeah, I'm kind of amazed by how big this is. You know, it's like 8.5 by 11, so it actually feels a lot like a European album. We did a really nice spot gloss on it and everything.
Yeah, man.
It's just amazing. It looks really cool.
And as always, I love your color choices for the palette and stuff. Truly inside the book. Again, having seen the first two issues, I can attest. These are, and I want to see if I'm right with my math, like 47, at least the first book is 47 pages long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know, and I don't know, I didn't check the page count on issue 2.
Yeah, they're all 47-ish.
Wow. That's great, Cliff. And it truly, I love this format. And also, not only from a story tone standpoint, but also the size as well. You get a nice meaty read here.
Yeah, that was for me, you know, I think there's artists work differently. When I look at something like Batman Damned by Azzarello and Bermejo, it's fully painted artwork. It looks so great, and on a bigger page, it looks awesome. For me, my stuff doesn't necessarily look better if it's larger. So I use the larger page size to put more panels in, and this gave me just a lot more real estate to tell the story. You know, even though it's 47 pages, it's probably closer to like the story that you would get in 64 pages of a regular size comic. You know, about each page is like another 20 to 30% more, you know, in terms of panels and work. So it's been great because I can make this a good, meaty, a dense read. I think, you know, one of the cool things about Black Label is that it's meant for older audiences. And so I can kind of assume a certain, like, you know, I can keep your attention for a certain amount of time, and I can expect people to kind of be willing to do a little bit more work on these pages too. So like they're dense, there's a lot in there. Hopefully it rewards multiple readings, and you know, and I'm just super proud of it.
As well you should be, dude. Honestly, it's beautiful. Great storytelling. How often, Cliff, have you written and drawn your own stories?
Not that much. I mean, it's, you know, I've written, I wrote a Batman Black and White 8-pager a few years ago, and I've kind of messed around on my own with like mini comics and stuff from the beginning. But you know, I've been really lucky to work with some of like the best writers in comics and reading their scripts, not just, you know, seeing the finished comics, but seeing how they work through, how they describe things in a script, and really internalizing that, hopefully. So I've been stealing from them liberally.
That's awesome, man. And I've got some callbacks from old stuff that I think you and I have talked before about. You know, I mean, good Lord, here I'm trying to grab. You know, of course, your epic with you and Straczynski, Brave and Bold issue of 33. Girls' Night Out. Was it Girls' Night Out?
I think it was called that. Yeah.
If not, that's obviously, and you can tell from the cover that's what it was. No, this is a real classic, pre-New 52.
Yeah, and also worked on this with Chris Conroy, who's the Black Label editor, and you know, and it's funny, I didn't realize, I think between Wonder Woman and those projects and Zatanna and stuff, I probably worked with Chris the most in my career now.
That's great. Great to hear that he's editing this as well, because no, I think you guys work together tremendously, and God, it really, honestly, man, it is such a pleasure to show some of these images. Here's another image from Lonely City, everybody. You know, kind of the title page, if you will. And there's Selena just strolling through Gotham, a different Gotham. And as you say, Harvey Dent, you already said, was the mayor. And on the surface, it seems like Gotham has tamed down, but under very heavy, I wouldn't say necessarily martial law, but given, unfortunately, some of the culture wars we've seen in the last 2 years, you kind of have police in kind of a riot gear.
Yeah, my inspiration for that was, what if Gotham City went through something like 9/11? What's their version? What's a superhero version, of that? And it's something called Fool's Night that takes the lives of Batman, the Joker, and Commissioner Gordon primarily, and after that, the city completely locks down and has a zero tolerance policy towards anyone wearing a costume or a mask. And there are reasons for that, which you'll learn by, I think in issue 2, we flash back to Fool's Night itself. But being in New York after 9/11, you would see army personnel like on the streets, and and wearing with guns and full gear and everything. And it was a weird feeling because you knew they were there for security, but yet at the same time, seeing them did not make you feel safer. And so some of that is working its way into this story, where Gotham City is just heavily policed, and with the intention of making sure that nothing like Fool's Night ever happens again.
Understood. I'm going to let people gush for a second. They want to know, first of all, Comic Crack wants to know how many issues.
4 issues.
Fair enough.
4 issues, 47 pages. You mentioned Dark Knight Returns earlier, and certainly that was like one point of inspiration, and it's something that even in format I wanted to be in dialogue with. If they do such a great piece of work in 4 issues at 48 pages, I wanted to see if I could also work my story into that number.
That's excellent, man. Here, Adrian Lontock says Cliff would have been disappointed if I didn't tune in. So that's nice, and he's excited for, or she, I'm not sure, Adrian. Could be a woman, could be a man. And then also, Nerdette, also really excited. Can't wait for the book. Great concept, great character. My favorite, actually. Keep up the good work. Architectural foam panels and columns. Excited for this book. Not reading much DC at the moment, but love Cliff's art. He's a great visual storyteller.
Thank you.
I think you won't be disappointed, Architectural. And then, let's see. Oh, Andrew wants to know, first of all, he wants to know, do you collect any vintage comic art yourself?
No, not really. I've dabbled with collecting art in the past, and then now I think the market is so kind of juiced up that it's hard to buy anything because my head hasn't adjusted to the new pricing. Anything that I want to buy, like I'll have a ceiling on it, and then what it actually goes for is probably twice as much. So I mean, it's great, and I think people who are into it are, it's fantastic. For me, I love having original art, but I also just, on an academic level, just like looking at scans of original art. So for me, a lot of the artist editions cover a lot of that desire as well, and I can have a giant stack of it as well. So I mean, I like having the bragging rights about having certain pieces of original art. I do have a few things. I have some Alex Toth Super Friends storyboards behind me. We've got some Goran Parlov pages from Fury, and then Eduardo Riso, an unused 100 Bullets page, and Edvin Bukovic, Human Target. And then I've got some other stuff that I haven't framed up yet.
That's amazing. And what's that color print?
That's Paul Pope. I think he did it. I forget what it was. He might have done it like on his 30th birthday or something like that, or maybe earlier, just kind of celebrating his European manga heritage. And he gave that to me as a birthday present, I think when I turned 30. So.
Oh, that's nice, man. That's great. And I hear you on original art. And in fact, I as much as I appreciate it and have a few pages here and there, mostly they've been from friends. And I'm a big commission guy. And to me, it's almost like getting a private performance.
It is,
like going up to a musician and going, "Hey, make a song for me." Oh, okay. You know, that's what.
Yeah, there's something cool and like meaningful that, you know, there's interaction that's part of that piece, you know, that is hidden kind of behind it, and you know, again, it's cool, and you get you know, the character that you're looking for or the theme that you want, and you can see how people play with it.
Andrew and Daniel wanted to know who influenced your style.
Wow, over the years, it's been a lot of people. You know, David Mazzucchelli, Alex Toth, um, Paul Smith on X-Men, John Byrne, you know, but at the same time, there's also, I think maybe more recently, Italian artist by the name of Dino Battaglia, another Italian artist, Gippi, and
Okay.
Naoki Urasawa. These are kind of more in terms of storytelling and vibe in a lot of ways, and you know, but there's it's weird. You get to a point where you just kind of are absorbing a lot of different things. Perhaps earlier on, you know, I had more specific inspirations that I would try to, you know, figure out. Oh, you know, I got to mention the recently departed John Paul Leon, who was just such a huge, I don't know, like North Star for me, you know, like he was just, you know, he was only a few years older, but just capable of such amazing work. And like, I would just always hold him up as like a standard, you know, and be like, this guy is just a couple years older. How is he doing this? You know, can I figure this out? And, you know, what was he doing when, you know, he's my age? And so constantly comparing, and then, you know, getting to know him and becoming friends with him, being able to sit next to him at shows and draw together, you know, was, yeah, it was a real heartbreaker to lose him.
Were you part of that group that John used to, present with?
Yeah, the Boulevard. Yeah, I was not part of their studio, but we would often be tabling next to each other at Heroes Con, and then, you know, I'd know all those guys at San Diego. You know.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, man. No, that's terrific, and yeah, man, we all miss him. What a sweetheart of a guy. And
Yeah.
And yeah, so like, do you skull session with artists in terms of storytelling and different techniques and stuff? Is that common for you when you have the opportunity?
Yeah, you know, that was one of the things that I liked best about shows, is being able to go around and everyone's in that mode already. You know, everyone's really eager to talk and chat and share, which is really cool. And now, you know, I try to, but you know, it's different when you're at home, when everybody's at home. You kind of have to set up, you know, phone calls with everybody and whatnot. Sure. Recently, you know, I was speaking a lot with Jock, who did our first variant cover, and he's doing his own great Black Label project, and so we were going back and forth about, you know, some of our art for that, and you know, his art and mine, and it was a wonderful kind of, you know, being able to share experiences, and you know, getting a sneak peek at stuff was pretty great.
That's awesome, man. You know, we all consider you one of the great A-listers, and again, I still have more covers and prints that I want to show from your past and stuff. How did COVID affect you from a work standpoint? Did you have to put your pencil down? I mean, what happened?
Yeah, you know, I didn't like it was such a confusing time. I didn't know. Nobody really knew how it was going to affect projects and what was going on. For me, since it wasn't like a monthly book coming out, there was less urgency to it. And by the time, so I just kept working and figuring, well, you know, I'll work, and if they can me, at least they'll have to pay me for what I did. But you know, as it turned out, they were like, no, just keep working. We're gonna be okay. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about DC. Just, you know, there's a real solidity to, you know, the company, where, you know, they had to move things around and adjust, but you know, a project like this, they were like, no, we're committed to it, don't worry, just keep doing what you're doing.
That's great, man. Well, in addition to great comics, always loved going to your table at conventions and just loving some of the prints that you've made of some of your ideas. And this started as a print, but then ultimately it did become an Archie cover.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite piece of yours, Cliff. It always has been. I know it's over 20 years old. Right? Am I right? Did you do it in the 90s, or did you do it in the early 2000s?
No, I think. Wow. Yeah. No, I think it was early 2000 though, probably 2005 or 6. Yeah.
All right, that's fine. But yeah, man, just, you know, the Archies as, the B-52s is my thought where I went immediately. That's where my brain went. So I love that, man. And also, how about these Star Wars things? These are great. I love this Boba Fett kind of James Bond kind of cover. Carbonite is forever. Everybody listening to the audio right now, here's another reason why to watch Word Balloon Live, because you get to look at some of this incredible art. And that's why I thank everybody for their ability. I went to your site, Cliff, and basically just did some scans and some clip in here. So I hope I'm doing you justice.
Yeah,
but, absolutely, man. And no, these great, and I'm only showing two, but these hilarious like pro Empire recruitment posters and things. And yeah, the second image for the audio audience is Darth leading the charge with a bunch of stormtroopers and other Empire soldiers, and it says he can't do it alone. Enlist today. And
yeah, those were a lot of fun. I had been approached, by Topps to do a bunch of cards, and I don't think they had a theme going, and so I pitched them doing propaganda posters after seeing my friend Mark Chiarello do this great recruiting poster of stormtroopers, and so they went for it, and we got some really, really fun pieces out of that we were able to then kind of expand upon. That Boba Fett was for a second set done for Acme Archives.
That's cool. Have you ever, like with things like this, have you ever done like Star Wars Celebration or anything and been one of the
No, I always meant to, but then never got around to it. And then, always felt like in order to go, I needed to have like another like brand new image to do there specifically for Celebration. So I never made it, but hopefully, we'll be able to.
I hear you, man. We're crawling back slowly.
Yeah.
People were wondering if you're going to go to Baltimore.
Yes, I am. I'm scheduled to be at Baltimore. Yeah.
I'll see you there. I'm going to be there as well.
Yeah, it's like my first show in like 5 years, probably. I mean,
yeah, man, I hear you. We're going to be streaming the Ringos. It's a good opportunity to let everyone know. So that's going to happen. Awesome. But that's great, man. No, I look forward to seeing you face to face. And then here's another great, inspired by rock and roll and stuff cover of Wonder Woman, and backed up by a canary and Zatanna there, and Harley on drums. Or no, is that Harley?
Batgirl.
Oh, is that Batgirl?
Batgirl, yeah, in like Kiss makeup. Yeah.
That's it. And gorgeous Poison Ivy. You draw beautiful women, man.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, this is why this story is going to be so great, because look at Selena. And I mean, again, you could tell, and kind of in that Dark Knight vibe, not to spoil, but clearly she's not the woman she was before she went into prison. So she can kind of still do her thing, but it takes a bigger toll than it did.
Yeah, I wanted to do a superhero story that looked at people on the edges. So often we see like the Titans, fighting each other, and then what happens to like the littler people, on the sidelines. And in this case, like how do people move on from being a superhero or a supervillain? What do they have to do? What's the second act for them? Because so many of the DC, cast, we just kind of assume that they just keep doing what they do, like the JSA, and in my head, like these are more like athletes, like professional athletes, and then when after a certain amount of time, there's just too much damage to their bodies to keep doing what they do. Or even more sad, like actors, once, especially women, once they hit a certain age, people stop casting them and things, and then the unfairness of that. So I wanted to take this chance to look at the people on the edges and find the really human stories there and bring them into this larger than life superhero heist.
Understood. We're talking mostly about this Catwoman Lonely City story. I'm going to cough, pardon me, Cliff. But I do also want to acknowledge that coming up in just a couple weeks, the Collected Paper Girls is coming out.
Yeah, super proud of that. I never thought, I never imagined we'd get to a place where, I have an omnibus or a creator-owned book, and to have it all in one giant tome, I think is going to be pretty handy for people, and hopefully mean less signing for me. I can just sign one book instead of 6.
I understand. And also, I know that he's no longer part of the project, but a few months ago, and he was involved, I know, at the beginnings, I spoke to Chris Cantwell
Yeah.
about the Paper Girls TV show. So I
Yeah.
don't know if you can give us an update on where things are with the TV show.
They finished filming the first season, and it's incredible work. Just seeing the cast come together and work this hard through COVID, was amazing. And then the writing and the staff and everybody, it's just everyone just putting their best effort forward. It's really humbling to be part of that. That's something we did, was the starting point. And then now they've taken it, they've expanded on it. But they're staying true to the source material at the same time. So it's really like nothing I've ever experienced. Just being able to watch it unfold is pretty incredible. Seeing dailies, effects, concept drawings, and I'm really excited. I don't know when it's going to be out, but I'm really excited for people to see it.
Which streamer or platform is it going to be on?
It's on Amazon.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Outstanding, man. Well, they've certainly done great work with The Boys and Invincible and other great things. So that's terrific. That's great to hear, man. Very cool.
Thank you.
And I mean, did you do any design work for the show?
Not really. I did put together some design documents for them, kind of going through the whole series and pulling out my reference that I use and things like that. But I haven't done any actual drawing for the show. Maybe that'll come later. I'm happy to do it.
Sure. And and goddamn, they better tap you to do some promotional prints or posters or something like that. My goodness, absolutely. So I certainly hope so.
Yeah, I'm very excited by what they've done, and I'd love to be able to kind of draw some version of it.
Understood. Now, Chandasok might have missed that you said that you've done a little bit of short writing before, but this is really your first long form assignment.
Yeah, it was, and it was tricky, going from like 8 pagers or even thinking about 20 pagers to this larger project. I really didn't want to leave anything to chance. And I'm a big believer in structure. So I set this up where I had sent the editors a very detailed outline, which then turned into a detailed beat sheet, and then turned into page breakdowns. So like this scene is 2 pages, this is another. So working it all into, see if it all fit into 47, 48 pages. And once those things were approved and we felt like it worked, then I could actually go in and do dialogue and that sort of thing, knowing that, I have 2 pages here to nail this scene, 3 pages here, and things would shift. I'd borrow, from here or there, but it was a tough process. But coming from, I used to work in editorial at DC at Vertigo for a couple of years, and so I have a lot of respect for the process. So I wanted to make sure that the script was as tight as possible, because things change as you draw and you can adjust for that. But if you make some sort of weird fundamental mistake early on, it's hard to fix that later, and it costs you more in terms of pages, in terms of redrawing things, and so the time, any kind of mistakes you make early, you pay for on the end, multiplied. So I really wanted to make sure it was good, and that people liked it, and it was readable, and that it made sense before, drawing anything. So, from there, then just doing layouts and lettering it actually on my layouts before penciling anything, so that so the editors have read the whole thing, a version of it, and then, and we know that it the car can make it down the road.
Understood. And truly, Cliff, no rush or anything. Is it finished, or are you still working on it?
No, I'm still working on it. I mean, that's the beauty of comics is that you always need a fire lit under you at some point. I think with the pandemic and being careful about the book and taking my time with it, I hope that it shows. And now that I'm a little bit more comfortable, it's okay to to have that deadline there and be working off of it. So I feel a little bit more like I know what I'm doing now. I've got like 90 something pages under my belt, and so it's I'm halfway there, so it should be all downhill, right?
I hear you, man. Absolutely. John Mosher, and again, you don't have to go into detail if you're not able to, but, and of course, everyone, I mean, this isn't even out yet. And it's like, so what's next, Cliff?
Right. Yeah.
Beyond
Catwoman Beyond. No, I actually don't.
Okay.
It's really, I don't think my brain has been this like saturated with a book ever, because the great thing about collaborating with people is that you're kind of only responsible for your bit of it. Here, I've been carrying around, this, 200 pages, 180 pages of story for the last 2 years. And, it's great to finally get an issue done and in the can, because then I can kind of forget about it and move on to the next one. So my head has been so filled with this that it's been very difficult to think about, or be creative outside of it. So I haven't thought too much about the future. But and a lot of it depends on how well this does. If people want to see more writing from me, then that's one thing. Or if people don't ever want to hear from me again, that means another.
Do you have creator-owned ideas? I mean, obviously, Paper Girl is such a big thing with you and Vaughn, but do you have some ideas that you want to pursue?
The funny thing is, no. I mean, I think I would, with the mental space, I would be able to come up with them, but it's been so like, it's been so all-consuming that I haven't really had a chance to let my brain rest and get to that place where you're daydreaming.
No, I respect that. Absolutely, man. Let's go back to the past then. Tell me about that time at Vertigo when you were part of editorial and stuff. What were some of the books you were supervising? Were you an associate editor? Were you a full editor? Who were you working with?
I was an assistant. I was working with Stuart Moore, and we worked on Books of Magic, Transmetropolitan, a bunch of. I worked early on 100 Bullets. I'm of course forgetting a whole bunch of things. We did so many miniseries and things at the time. So I spent 2 years doing that, and it was such a great experience because I thought I knew how comics were put together, because you read how to draw comics the Marvel way or whatever, so that there's penciling and inking and lettering and coloring, the different stages of it. But then when you actually get into the office and see how you have to juggle different things to make sure, everybody is working and that you can hit the deadline, that was such a formative experience for me. And then on top of that, just as a creator, being able to read fantastic scripts, I was helping out on Preacher, and Hellblazer and stuff like that. So reading Garth Ennis scripts, amazing, and so well told without a lot of like not a lot of fat like in the script itself. So seeing that and then seeing how artists would interpret those scripts was also really important because everybody would have a different take on it. I worked on a book called Michael Moorcock's Multiverse, and which had multiple artists on it. Walt Simonson, John Ridgway, and seeing each artist handle the script by Moorcock. There were different chapters; they each had different subject matter, but the choices that were made were really illuminating. And to me, I was just sucking it all in. It was just great information, and I knew that I wanted to draw comics, but I knew that I didn't have enough experience, and I knew that my art wasn't good enough. So I was just kind of absorbing all this stuff like a sponge, and then going home at night to draw and figure out what I wanted my comics to look like and read like.
How long into the job did it take before you felt confident enough? And what did you show? Were there tryout pages or just images? What did you submit to say, hey, maybe you have to draw something?
Yeah, it was tricky because I knew when I started the job that I wanted to draw, I didn't know if I'd make it. I didn't know if I was ever going to be good enough. But I showed stuff around, and I think, not right away. I think you kind of, I needed to establish myself as like a trustworthy human being before, dropping Xeroxes off at every editor's door.
Sure.
But after a while, editors started, looking at my stuff, and I would ask for critiques, which were super helpful. And, there were people who were really, really supportive. Pete Tomasi
That's great.
was, incredibly supportive and wanted to work together. DC had probably a very wise policy of editors not needing permission to work freelance on books, in order to keep that from being abused. And frankly, it's really difficult to draw a comic with a full-time job like comics, because we were there pretty late. I was there at least till 7 or 9 most nights, and then having to go home and then get dinner and then draw. It was just, you're not going to be able to do a monthly book, that's for sure. So anything that I did was going to be very limited in scope. But after a while, just keeping at it and showing stuff off, I think I was able to get enough interest, from editors that when I decided to leave, I would have like a short story here and there, and then slowly, kind of build up a resume.
Well, and you're naming a lot of my favorite people and editors and tastemakers in comics when you mention Stuart and Pete and everything. I trust their eye.
Yeah, Tony Bedard and
Sure,
Heidi
Tony's
McDonald
great.
and Joan Hilty, they gave me like some of my earliest, sequential jobs. And, and actually while I was on staff, I was able to do with Jim Higgins, those big books, those
Yes.
Paradox Press big books.
Yes.
And those were really great, 1 or 2 pages, black and white, and, really kind of get, I don't know, get your feet,
Yeah, get your feet wet.
Yeah.
I'm with you, man. Boy, I love those Paradox Press books. Do you remember what stories you did?
Yeah, I did the Big Book of Grimm, I think was my first job, and it was a Little Red Riding Hood.
Okay. Oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah, and it was funny because I drew that and inked it so tightly that I decided I was never going to draw like that again. I was trying to, in my head be like Steve Rude or something, and it wasn't. I like the way it turned out, but it just took so long, and I wanted every brush line to be perfect. And after that, I looked at it and I was like, I'm happy I did this, but I can't work like this again, because it was nerve-wracking, and it just made me kind of loosen up a little bit more. And I started thinking more about Alex Toth, Jorge Zaffino, Jordy Burnett, and trying to work in a style that almost had a slightly more calligraphic feel to it, and that would have the fundamentals of things that I liked, spotting blacks and the storytelling and a certain kind of meaningful minimalism,
I like that.
Yeah, and so that was that kind of set me off on that path, which was good. So some things you only learn the hard way.
I'm going to let Jason ask his question, but I'm going to also modify it a little bit because I'm curious. He's kind of answered this already, Jason. Was it intimidating coloring Catwoman yourself? Did you seek the advice of former collaborators like Matthew Wilson? What kind of research did you turn to? And I was going to ask, do you have a specific palette for Gotham City?
Right. I was a little nervous about coloring Catwoman. I've colored all my covers from the beginning, so part of me, it was very important to color work as illustrations, because it's part of the whole vision for the piece. So, and as much as I love collaborating with people on something like a cover, I felt like there was room for me to try that out. With interiors, I didn't color any interiors until, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or less than that. 8 years ago, I did a Secret Origins thing with Ra's al Ghul, and it was really hard because there's a level of abstraction that needs to happen, and each panel can't be its own cover. You have to kind of think about it as a whole. And, that experience made me think twice about it and made me realize like, oh, like I'm not going to be fast enough to do this. As the years have gone on and working with really, great people like Matt Wilson, I've learned, by looking at what they've done, how to kind of rein it in a little bit, how to be more interesting with fewer colors and that sort of thing. And so I felt like I could handle it, but it was still a big question mark. So, getting through that first issue was difficult, but so ultimately rewarding, because I felt like, yeah, okay, I can do this. And then as we get further into the issues too, I can try other things out and not be, coloring kind of sucks when it's too literal, like you need to kind of think about mood. And I think readers actually don't even think about it so much when they're reading something. You're kind of just swept up in it, which is cool. And that's what you want. And so, coloring the book was a great learning experience. And I love doing it. It's probably one of my favorite parts of the process.
That's cool. I'm answering someone because again we're getting questions that have already been covered. But here's a great comment and question from Jico Rojo, who wants to know: do you wear a wrist brace when you're drawing? And he also says, "Thanks for being here. By the way, your art for Gatchaman pieces looks super nice, and I snapped one of those as well." So
yeah. Let's see, a wrist brace.
You need it or anything?
There was a time when I did have one on, and I was suffering from a little weird pain in like my elbow.
Ooh.
And it was kind of traveling up to a little numbness in my wrist, and I couldn't figure out what it was for the longest time. But what I did figure out was about 3 to 4 months earlier, I'd started working on a larger drawing tablet, like a really big one. And my primary monitor was off to the side, which meant that like the whole time I'd be drawing and then have my neck turned. And this kind of stress somehow traveled down from here to my elbow and gave me like this weird, almost funny bone numbness. And I realized I had to rearrange everything, and and the monitor, the tablet was so big that I couldn't really fit another monitor around it, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm like killing myself here trying to draw, and so I ended up buying a smaller one, and it worked out great, and I was able to line it up, and then so I'm not craning my neck over, and that eventually solved it. It took a while for it to go away, but I essentially self-diagnosed it. I probably should have gone to go see somebody, but somehow those you don't think that way.
No, of course not, man. No, we all ignore the doctor until it's obvious. It's like, all right, we better do something. But it's interesting to learn that you were able to self-diagnose, because I've got a lot of art friends who it's like, I'm getting a little numbness in my drawing hand, and it's like,
yeah, it's really easy to get. Yeah, the carpal tunnel and everything. It's just, and you have to just take a second, look around, like, what am I doing that's somehow extreme and not comfortable, and there's so many things. It could be your chair, it could be the height of your desk, and these are all things that can take a little while to figure out, and then once you do, it's great. But it's so important for artists to think about their health as they're drawing, and there's a great book that's out. I forget what it's called. I think How to Draw. Give me a second. I'll keep talking.
Oh, sure,
and it gives you all sorts of cool stretches that you can do and things like that. All right, I can't find it. It's got a light green cover. But making sure you stretch and twist and get up and drink water and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, you're right. And it's funny because I used to work in banking, and I worked on a 10-key number pad, and it gave me the worst carpal tunnel. And I really have to type. I really can't handwrite as I did when I was. And what are you gonna do? That's all right. Yeah, that's why I'm in radio, man. No less writing. I just BSing with my mouth and everything. So Dan has a good question and a great run, man. What was it like working on Green Arrow, Black Canary? I recently started reading that series. And he also says he loves your work on Paper Girls and Wonder Woman. Absolutely. We'll talk about Wonder Woman in a second.
Yeah, Green Arrow Black Canary was my first like real shot at doing superheroes. I had done a piece for a commission actually, and that I'd brought to Heroes Con, and Dan DiDio saw it, and he said, you know, this is really great, but you know, after the show, when we're back in New York, come see me. And I was like, wow, this is you know, and I just finished up on Human Target, I believe.
Yes.
So I went in to see him, and he's like, yeah, we're starting up this new he walked me over to Mike Carlin's office and basically like threw me into the office and said, here's your guy, and we're doing a new Green Arrow Black Canary book. And then he showed him the, you know, the piece that I'd done, and Mike was, you know, to his credit, he was like, yeah, this is great. So, you know, in spite of having the boss throw somebody at you, and you know, it was a lot of fun. You know, I tried to draw it in a certain way that very stylized and sharp, and it was a really cool experience. Unfortunately, it wasn't fast enough, and you know, my family was going through some stuff at the time. My mom was going through some breast cancer and going through radiation and stuff. She's fine now, but like it meant that like I only ended up doing like 4 or 5 issues or 6 issues. I kept on with the covers. You know, it was great working with Judd Winnick again. We had worked together on Josie Mack in Detective Comics backups.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it was super fun. And you know what? They got Mike Norton after me, and he did such a incredible job with the rest of that series. Like the lion's share of that work is Mike and his incredible storytelling, and you know, and he kept the style similar, and it looked really cool, and you know, and it you know, he's unsung, I think, for that run for sure.
I hear you, man. No, and you know, Mike's a local good friend as well in Chicago here.
Yeah, great cartoonist.
Oh no, and truly, it was like I was watching and saying, "Wow, that's amazing." And obviously, they did want to kind of keep your style. And thankfully, Mike is one of those great versatile artists that can mimic some great styles and stuff.
Yeah.
So here's a terrific Human Target cover from you, I think.
Yeah, Human Target was so much fun. You know, I mean, I was on staff when the first Milligan miniseries was coming together with, you know, Eddie Bukovic, and you know, and I just loved that book so much. And to be asked to work on it, you know, after leaving, after going freelance, was just a huge deal for me. You know, just I loved being able to tell that kind of story, and you know, Milligan's writing is just so sharp and smart and unexpected, and you know, it was a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, he brought this psychology to you know, Christopher Chance, that, I mean, before it was just this great kind of straight up espionage, whatever kind of, you know, story.
Yeah,
and I loved it back then, you know, when it was Len Wein and Giordano and those guys. But yeah, Milligan and you just, I mean, and you're right, it started with Bukovic as well, but especially your run and also the graphic novel that you did too.
Actually, yeah, Javier Pulido did the graphic novel, and then he did most of the other issues on Human Target as well. So it was really cool bouncing between the two of us, because you knew that Javier was going to do something awesome and graphic and kind of groundbreaking with the storytelling. You know, he thought so much about that stuff, and then at the same time, like I didn't want to do that because he was doing that. And so like, you know, my issues would kind of go a different way. And Milligan's writing is so versatile that you can do both of those things. You know, I was trying to do like a more cinematic thing along the lines of what Bukovic had done. And, you know, and to have those two experiences when you're reading the book, I think is really cool. And maybe in some ways, you know, almost, you know, mirrored, you know, this idea of, you know, Christopher Chance being able to be a chameleon. So you would get, you know, all these different stories every time, every arc.
We got another question, because I didn't ask this when we were talking about the Brave and Bold issue. Greg wants to know how you and Straczynski got, you know, to collaborate on that.
Yeah, honestly, I do not know. Straczynski was doing that cool Brave and the Bold series, and each one was like a one-off, and I love that style of storytelling, and each one was this kind of, each one was a like a bombshell kind of character moment, and uh, this one was great. It was so much fun to do. It was so much fun to draw those characters, and both in and out of costume. And it's for those who haven't read it, it's about um, Zatanna and Wonder Woman, taking Batgirl out for a night on the town, also knowing that she is. It's sort of a lead up to the Killing Joke, where she's shot by the Joker and then paralyzed. So they're taking her out for one last night, but they can't tell her that, and so it's really heartbreaking. And at the same time, you also just want it to be joyful and just a fun night on the town, and not dwell on the life altering changes that come later.
Architectural Phone Panels wants to know the desert island question. If you were stranded, what's one comic book, either single issue or run or a complete series, would you be content reading and rereading for the rest of your life? Do you have something like that?
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really, really tough. I think, it's really tough because in terms of a run, yeah, a desert island, I don't think I'd bring just one book, or something that will be collected in one book, because you just run out of too much too soon, even no matter how good it is. In terms of sheer volume, I would probably go for 20th Century Boys,
Oh,
maybe.
nice.
Yeah, because there's so much of it, and there's ways in which you go through an arc, and then you go through it again with slight tweaks, like almost like a remix, and I'd want to kind of check that out and pick it apart a little bit more to see how it does that. And there's just 20 plus volumes of it, so I'd have a lot at least to go through.
G. Corrijo has a good question. Do you find it easier to draw action scenes or the conversation scenes with characters?
It's a good question. I think it depends on the scene, and that's not meant to be a dodge. Both types of scenes can be really hard if there isn't a purpose or a point to them. And I've drawn comics where like scenes just happen for people to talk and get from plot, from point A to point B, and that's awful. But when characters are talking and there's subtext and something happens in that scene between those two characters, that's great. That's one of the best things to draw. Same thing with an action scene. Are they just fighting so that they can reach a stalemate at the end? Like, kind of, you can tell when a fight or any action scene has a purpose and changes the stakes. So really it's about drama. If there's no drama happening in the scene, it's awful, and it's hard to draw because there's no momentum to it. But with action scenes or talking scenes or dialogue, I mean, those can both be incredibly interesting if they're set up the right way.
Fair enough. Comic Crack. Now I don't know this show. You'll have to explain it to me if you know what he's talking about. Do you watch the Man Bend show? That's one of the lockdown discoveries I've gone back to a few times.
Yeah, I've been wanting to watch it. Manben is Naoki Urasawa interviewing other manga creators. And yeah, and
I'd love to see that.
It sounds amazing. I think it's on YouTube somewhere, and it's subtitled. The problem is usually when I'm working, I can have stuff on, but unless it's dubbed, I can't, like, I would just sit there and watch instead of drawing. So I haven't dug into it, and I keep forgetting about it. It's one of these days when I'm done with Catwoman, I'll take I'll take a month off and just sit back and watch stuff. Probably not. I'll probably just end up scrolling through Twitter.
No, I hear what you do, man. I hear what you're saying. A lot of times when I'm editing, I have like television wallpaper of things that I've like watched a million times and just can kind of listen to and appreciate the jokes. Or if it's Star Trek, it's always Star Trek.
Yeah. And and the sad thing is, it's actually the shows that you can watch that way usually aren't that great because it means they're talking too much and like not doing anything visually, you know?
True.
So, but it's a good way to kind of clear through a backlog of things. You're like, oh, I always meant to watch that show, and then you can just kind of leave it on. Another great thing is if you've watched it already and go back and watch it again, you know, just leave it on. Like something like Breaking Bad or The Sopranos or, you know, recently Succession. You know, it's really fun to just leave it on, and you're like, oh yeah, that scene was really great, and you can kind of come back into it. But yeah, thanks for the reminder about Monben. I do want to check that out.
Yeah, everyone's totally recommended it to me as well. And I guess Comic Rec says there's subtitled versions on Daily Motion as well as YouTube. Good to know.
Cool.
So here's an interesting question for Dan. And you kind of covered that obviously for the Catwoman story, you're packing a lot of panels. Do you, hold on one second. Where is it? There it is. Do you prefer drawing in a certain type of structure like 9-panel versus a 3-panel grid or whatever?
Yeah. All right. Let me talk about this a little bit. You know, for a regular comics page, 9 panels works really well. You end up with these tall panels where you can stack dialogue or captions and stuff at the top, third roughly, and then the rest of it, you know, ends up being image. And, you know, and you can kind of move that around. But 9 panels gives you a very set rhythm, and then it also means 3 tiers, you know, which works pretty well. Once you start, you know, breaking that up into 4 tiers or 5, the panels get a little squat, and it's hard to work stuff in because once you have a balloon, you've kind of taken up the whole part of that panel. So 3 tiers works well for me, generally speaking. And then with the Black Label pages, it's wider proportionally. So what I ended up doing is adding kind of another 3 panels down the side, so roughly a 12 panel grid. In later issues, it actually it never reaches this panel count, but it's roughly 15 panels that, you know, sort of like if you look at Watchmen, you know, it'll be a panel and then like a double panel, or you know, and then sometimes you get one that's like the full 3 across the bottom or 2 tiers. And so doing that, you know, across 15 panels was maybe the most I was doing. You know, the same thing happens in Dark Knight Returns as well on this, but with 16 panels. So it's not, I ended up using a stricter grid than I would normally for something like Paper Girls, but generally you'll see me work with 3 tiers because I just like it. If you look at something like the Carl Barks Duck books, they're so easy to read because they stick to a good vertical size where you can, you know, put the lettering at the top and give enough, you know, space for the image. And, you know, I don't break up horizontally into like a strict grid usually, but I try to keep it in tiers so that a new reader can follow along really easily. You know, one of the difficult things with 9 panels on a page, exactly the same size, you can go up, down, left, right, you know, and you're not quite sure which way to go if you're not really comfortable with comics. And so that's hard for a new reader. And I always try to think about that because you never know when someone's going to be picking up for the first time. The types of books I like to work on aren't just for the really seasoned readers. You know, something like this, like Catwoman, I'm hoping, you know, has a wider audience. You know, there's a lot in there for people who love DC Comics. There's a lot of Easter eggs, and there's a lot of history that's in there. But it's also stuff that you don't need to know in order to appreciate the story. And I feel like I want this book to resonate with people who don't know that history and just know Catwoman and Batman from the TV show or the movies. And that's the limit of their kind of cultural familiarity with it. But, you know, you tell them the basic premise of the story and they're in. So, you know, trying to think about, you know, everybody, you know, potentially reading this and not just, you know, us, you know, kind of real hardcore hobbyists.
I hear you, man. I'm so glad Jay Gomez asked this question because I was going to ask you about working with Azzarello on Wonder Woman, but more importantly, the Dr. 13 backup you did is great. It's one of his all-time favorite stories. I completely agree. And again, it made me snag a great little panel here from the story and stuff. What a great assemblage of characters, and also that story. It really pokes fun at. I got to remember the quartet. It's Rucka, Johns, Wade, and Grant.
Yeah, the architects of the DCU at the time. I think it was like something that came up in an interview or whatever.
Sure, because it was during the story 52, not the new 52.
Yeah, it was pre that.
They were the showrunners and writers of that story. So yeah, talk about
and they kind of, I think, walked into that. They didn't deserve to be targeted the way they did. It's more the idea of in a way, editorial, insisting that a universe be destroyed and remade, and what happens to the characters, and just kind of taking this metatextual approach to it, where these are characters that weren't even going to be like killed or destroyed; they just weren't going to be used, and trying to come to grips with that, as the universe was going to continue without them, and then meeting the architects and trying to get some answers. So a little bit of kind of trying to find God and wrestle with him.
Jake Uriho also wants to know, or wrote, yeah, I am Jake Uriho. Okay, fine. I'm finally kind of pronouncing your name hopefully correctly. But he wanted to know what non-comic books are you reading? Do you have time to read novels or short stories? Or
I should be reading a lot more. Unfortunately, this book, I think, between like kind of weird pandemic brain where like I'm distracted every 5 minutes, it's probably not healthy. I'm just working all the time. I do have some books that I've bought and haven't read. Non-comic stuff recently. There's a book that I just found out about that I'm dying to read. I think it's 1001 Nights, The Heroine's Journey, I believe. A Harvard professor, she's writing about, the difference when, in a female's story, a female hero's story, and how that relates to the Joseph Campbell stuff, and how it's different, and what the changes in those arcs mean, and so that's fascinating. I also bought, I think, another. God, I can't even think of the book right now. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that is sitting on the nightstand or on the Kindle, the virtual nightstand.
It's funny because Rucka and I've had that conversation as well when talking about his female protagonists and stuff, and how you put Bruce Wayne in a dark alley and you put Jessica Jones in a dark alley, and they're two very different stories and with very different problems.
Yeah, and I love the fact that, much like with Paper Girls, we've seen this kind of young coming of age story, in the 80s. There were so many movies like that, but we never saw them from a female perspective, and making those making the main characters girls changed the story and changed what people might expect from it, and broadened it, and it's the same thing here with Catwoman Lonely City, where we've seen these kinds of stories with older heroes. What happens when you look at it from a different perspective? What happens when I'm trying to dial down like the bravado and sort of the machismo that you get in some of these kinds of stories, and just see like let's check in with these characters. How are they feeling? How are they doing? And for Catwoman, spending 10 years in jail and not processing what happened to her versus the rest of the world, which has moved on. So it's a real fish out of water story, and I feel like readers are somehow more willing to access a character emotionally, a female character emotionally, than they would if it were Bruce Wayne doing this. Like they just want to see him punching somebody, soon. Whereas we can sit with this character and let some interiority, come through, and we can also let ourselves be concerned for her. It's weird. There's, for me, it's a lot of like, I've got some internalized stuff that, that you always want to kind of check on, But the point of the story was to kind of look at the DCU from a different angle, kind of like a prism, just come at it differently and see where you bounce out.
Understood. No, absolutely, man. Mario wants to know the differences between working with two guys like the two Bryans,
Yeah.
Azzarello and Brian K. Vaughan.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. They're very different. The scripts are very different, and the thinking is very different. There's a pace difference with Azzarello. We worked together so much. There was a lot of trust, and we got to a point where we were almost doing things kind of Marvel style, where we, at the end of Wonder Woman, he would give me a couple paragraphs, and then I would kind of break down scenes and then send it back to him, and I would send them back to him with dialogue. Actually, maybe this is where I was getting some writing practice in. And he would completely re-dialogue it with a different sense. But what I was giving him was a certain amount of rhythm of like back and forth, and then that person is going to say something snarky, and then that person is going to reply, and then give a zinger, and then end scene. On top of his general like overall plotting of the arc and the issue. So it was a lot of fun working that way, and his dialogue is just so singular, and so you want to make sure that you get those interactions and the back and forth and capture all the kind of life that's there, he really he's very understated, so you want to make sure that you get that stuff in there, for people, that you nail it. With Vaughn, I feel like the work is so deceptively readable, like you read it and it's super smooth, and it just each panel propels you into the next, and at the end of the page you get some sort of, not a cliffhanger, but some sort of question that makes you flip the page. So I really love that kind of classical mode of storytelling, combined with his modern sensibilities for pacing and character and stuff like that. So in that way, we weren't, we nothing was Marvel style remotely, but the scripts would come in, and it was up to me to kind of, how did I want to stage this stuff to get the most out of that dialogue, to get the most out of those moments, because he's very aware of like what's supposed to be happening in each panel, and which is why his scripts are almost, you can get all different kinds of artists drawing his scripts, but they also very much seem like they always feel like he wrote them, and his voice always comes through, and so that's really pretty impressive. So between the two, it's just, one is like jamming, jazz, working with Azzarello is like jazz on stage, and you're constantly coming up with stuff and throwing it back to the other person, and then with Vaughn, it's like this kind of orchestral piece, or classical music. I used to play piano when I was a kid, and and getting like this classical piece of sheet music, and you're like, play that, don't screw it up, but play it with your emotion and whatever emphasis you want, but these are the notes.
I like it. All right,
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a nice softball to wrap things up here, Cliff. Do you listen to me, and mentioning music and that you play piano, do you listen to music or podcasts or radio programs when drawing? If so, what are you listening to?
Yeah, I listen to whatever will keep me in the seat. I listen to Word Balloon.
God bless you, son.
Yeah,
to say that, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
I do. Word Balloon's always great, and keep on top of like, well, I haven't been reading that many comics, and so it's really cool to kind of keep on top of things by listening to podcasts. Off Panel with David Harper.
Great show.
Yeah.
Let me echo that. I love David's show. It's a fantastic show.
Outside of comics, You Must Remember This. Katrina Longworth. Yeah. Yes. Just fantastic. And such really good deep dives on film and the people who make film, and the kind of hidden stories that people have kind of glossed over, just because they're from 50 years ago or less. Last year's season on Polly Platt was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Good Lord, yes. You know, it's funny, Cliff. I'm so glad you mentioned that show because I always want to keep myself honest. It's my ambition to make a narrative podcast like You Must Remember This
Yeah.
and do it about one of my favorite sports subjects, and that's boxing from the 40s to the 60s when the mob really was controlling boxing.
That's cool. Yeah, I would love to hear that.
Oh, there you go, man. Thank you. Did you watch Tyson Fury and Deontay
No,
Wilder?
no, I don't. You know, I'm not a sports guy at all, which is you know, and even though like my brothers are and many of my friends are, but you know, and I'm always fascinated by it. You know, I love reading about it. You know, and I remember reading, you know, what was it? Lipsight's book on Tyson, right? Was it
Great
Lipsight?
book, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember reading that like as a kid, you know, and
Yep.
and I think his son came in to talk to our class once,
kidding. Wow.
or was it Lipsight himself? I don't remember because this is in Jersey. So
that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, it was fascinating, and hearing that, especially like at the time, which was like in the 90s when Tyson was just unstoppable, and reading that book then and getting some insight into who he was pretty incredible.
I have a lot of sports writers that are my mentors in the same way that you were mentioning Toth and some of the other artists that you look up to. So no, I totally get that.
Yeah, what a fascinating subject. Like to take, your understanding of the sport combined with biography, combined with narrative, and try and make something that illuminates, without like turning somebody into just a character. You really want to, kind of bring another level of understanding to the person and not just, not like a biopic.
I hear you, man. Wesley's late to the party, but he wanted you to know he's still picking up Wonder Woman after your run because of your run. He's also a big fan of Paper Girls as well.
That's great.
And yeah, man, Wesley, you got a lot to enjoy and listen to. If there's room, let's see.
Yeah.
Yes, Lonely City. And I was going to ask this.
Yeah.
It ships every other month. We're going to start with the new issue next Tuesday, the 18th, or probably the 19th.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next book, too, is out December 21st. So DC wanted us to mention that. That's cool. And again, man, thank you, everybody at DC, for allowing me to look at Lonely City. Very excited for the book to start. This is the cover to look for next Tuesday. And then, of course, this alternate cover as well that I just adore. Both are amazing.
Yeah, and there's a very cool 1 in 25 Jock cover that I was so happy to have Jock on it. And I did a variant for him as well, and it was really cool. Like, 'cause this is our first time, both of us writing our own projects, and the thrill, because we've both done many variant covers in the past, but getting one for something that you wrote, that there's no like feeling like it, and we've I've been in this business for like at least 20 years or whatever, and like to feel something new like that is really surprising, and really kind of got me a little choked up seeing it. So
that's beautiful.
It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, folks, I've read the first 2 issues. Lonely City does not disappoint. You really have to read it. And everyone's thanking you for being here. And absolutely. And also Greg wants to know he's excited to see you. Just a couple of weeks, we'll be in Baltimore.
Yep.
So make sure you hit Cliff's table. And I'm sure Cliff will have some of his incredible prints that I've been displaying and everything. And truly, like here, a final design thing. This is for a Batman statue.
Oh, yeah.
Love this, man. That's gorgeous. Absolutely great, man. Jesus. Terrific stuff. Cliff, unbelievable conversation, man. I'm so glad we did this.
Yeah, it's great to talk with you.
You're always welcome back. Maybe after Lonely City's wrapped up for the trade or something, you can come back and we'll take more questions from the audience. And
we can chop it up and we'll talk about the story itself. That'd be really, really cool.
Absolutely.
I'd love to hear your take on it.
Oh, and again, I've loved what I read halfway through it, and it's got my full attention. So it's gonna suck to have to wait till February to get the next chapter, but that's all right. It's worth the wait from Cliff Chiang. Really great stuff, and truly, everybody, again, not only Cliff drawing this and coloring it, but writing it for this first time as well. Does not disappoint. I can't say it enough.
Yeah, and lettering actually too.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I know it's kind of dumb. Like I feel like like one of those one-man bands with like all the instruments like tied to me. But it's just it was important to me to try and do all of it because like there's just little nuances that add up, and like as much as I love collaborating with people and there are people who would color this better than I do, there are people who would ink this better than I do, there are people who would letter this better than I do, but it's all that kind of I don't know, this almost farm to table feeling, very artisanal comic book experience, so that I wanted that balloon right where that is, and even if it's a little wonky or whatever, that's my intention. So and all these things add up to a reading experience, and so hopefully I hope people enjoy it.
That's excellent, man. Lonely City, issue 1 from DC's Black Label, out next Tuesday, not the 12th but the 19th, and a very handmade comic from Cliff Chiang. That's great, man. Truly, congrats. All the best, and I'll see you in just under 2 weeks, and we'll talk more. I will close by showing again this wonderful, my absolute favorite Cliff Chiang image. I know it's old, but the art, like I said, the Archies as the B-52s.
Yeah, shout out to Jaime Hernandez for inspiring that image as well.
I understand, man. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for watching. Everybody stay safe.